Welcome to the patch 25.S1.3. This is the third patch of the new season, and today we will be running down through a lot of nerfs and buffs and system changes as well. And some of these changes actually worry some player base because Riot has implemented the durability patch and they're moving on to an aggressive approach by buffing some of the systems as well. They will be doing some changes when it comes to this, but we don't really care. Streamer mode, people will still be able to stream snipe, but this is a way to disable some people from doing it so often and as efficiently as well. Attack speed cap, this is very interesting because these type of ADCs who will benefit from this, and even some champions who aren't ADCs who can benefit from this, will definitely be making a huge change when coming into this. Obviously, champions like Jayce and so on won't make a difference, especially when a lot of mages are showing around bot side. But mainly ADCs that play on it and stack a lot of attack speed, or champions like Master Yi, for example, they will definitely like this change, along with enchanters, making it a possibility for these type of champions to shine through. Champion bounties, we're continuing to turn out the champion bounties for losing teams. Not this time more aggressively than the previous. There's still more room to go here if we need to, but we want to further reduce number of times when lone champion has a bounty trying to prop their team up like Atlas with Earth. Lead required to begin positive bounty suppression has been decreased by 60%. Lead required to fully remove bounties from losing team decreased by 33%. And once objective bounty spawn, champion bounties are now fully suppressed for the losing team. I'm not a big fan of bounties, so anything that means reduction of bounties is always welcome. Despite the game being currently very snowbally and so on, I'm not a fan of bounties apart from champion bounties because it was really toxic back then, but Riot has been trying to settle the sort of balance for it in the past few weeks as well, in the past few patches. Chemtech Soul is currently the worst, that's true. Cloud Soul was actually the most underrated one, but the one with the most win rate when teams achieved it, because the mobility is just very strong for each team, especially in pro play. And solo queue, even though solo queue don't have much coordination, it still makes a lot of sense for you to want that extra movement speed to rely on as well. So Chemtech currently is the worst performing Dragon Soul of them all, so we're giving it some needed power so it can feel a bit more impactful when compared to its soul siblings. So instead of below 50% health buff, it goes from 11% to 13% increased damage and damage reduction. The cool thing is, it's mainly good with enchanters because heals and shields are empowered by this. So if you're able to get through with Chemtech Soul with an enchanter composition with Ivern, Sona, or a really high utility comp like this one, then Chemtech Soul will definitely be more felt in that regard. Cloud Soul, the strongest, is receiving a 5% movement speed nerf. It's actually big, but it will still be a very reliable soul, and movement speed is always necessary as well. About the Void Grubs, it's normal that Riot wants to nerf it because they have been really obnoxious. And despite Dragon spawning first, if a team is able to get all 6 Grubs, they are able to snowball through easily. Like if they can get 6 Grubs in their ult, most of the games will finish fairly quickly if the team knows how to play and apply proper pressure in structures by splitting and so on. So in initial spawn, health and attack damage updates immediately instead of at 604, okay. And buff structure damage per stack is now from 804.
Thank you for following.
For every 1 second for 4 to 6-3. So basically, it's a bigger nerf for melee champions because melee champions used to deal 8 every 1 second for 4 seconds. Now it's going to be 6, while ranged gets reduced by 1. Obviously, split pushing champions like Aurelia, Tryndamere, and other obnoxious champions that could get through this with the Grubs could get a huge use of this, especially with the Demolish 3 helping. Demolish Resolve 3 helping. Atakhan, Voracious Atakhan's win rate impact actually managed to go up over the last patch despite the nerfs, so we're adding a few more on. Yeah, because, in my perspective, this Atakhan is not really beneficial or even healthy for the game. For me, it's similar to the old Chemtech Soul, where it got really obnoxious, and this one is not really healthy for the game. The Ruinous Atakhan is really strong because you get a lot of adaptive force and experience, but this one, the fact that you get the GA and you can brute force fights despite having some gold dropped. Now they will make a move where instead of waiting 5.5 seconds in base, you have to wait 15 seconds to respawn, actually. And the extra gold you earn is going to be less. So it makes more sense, even though I'm not a fan of the GA Atakhan. But to be fair, most teams don't know how to play against GA Atakhan. Most of the times, you just really want to proxy waves and not interact against the enemy team. But most teams think they have to fight because they are sieging instead of proxying waves when they are doing the objective. If you cannot contest the objective in Voracious Atakhan, just make sure you apply deep vision in the opposite side and make sure you get the waves so they can be reduced in tempo when it comes to power play. Even though it's a fair change, I'm still not a fan of the Atakhan. Champions, Cassiopeia. Okay, now we're moving into champions. Q damage is going to be decreased, W damage is going to be decreased as well. I mean, fair enough. Cassiopeia is one of the strongest champions at the moment. And despite the nerf because of the feats of strength, movement speed that she got from each level after she got the feats of strength, we have to acknowledge that Cassiopeia has a high win rate, mainly because she's a counter pick. Cassiopeia isn't usually blinded when it comes to drafting. You usually draft Cassiopeia when you see the enemy composition. There's a lot of melees in front of you, when you want to be disruptive and when you want to play with a range advantage. You don't want to play Cassiopeia into Xerath, into Varus, or into champions that apply a lot of pressure through distance, okay? So Cassiopeia obviously has more win rate in that regard because most of the times and most OTPs pick her when she's seen as a counter pick. Still, she was very strong indeed, and her build is Omega cheap with rallies and so on. So they decided to remove some AP ratios. Not the end of the world, in my perspective. I think Cassiopeia doesn't really want to stack much AP because your build, despite being a nerf at this point, because this is damage per second on the miasma, keep in mind that most people are running away from the miasma, right? So you will not get the full damage from the miasma either way. So this nerf into 10% AP and the above nerf of 65% AP is obviously going to be a bit felt, but not the end of the world for Cassiopeia, as I believe it's a fair balance change as well. She wants damage, but her build allows her to be useful instead of relying so much in these AP ratios, because she doesn't really want to rush Rabadans this early. She does Seraphs, Rallies, Liandries, and other itemization that doesn't necessarily mean that she wants high AP value. So her base damage is untouched, basically. Evelynn, one of the main winners of the few patches and the season, because this is, if I'm not mistaken, this is the third time in a row that she's gotten a buff. So basic damage from Whiplash is going up in terms of base damage only, and the empower damage is also going up in base damage only. So I believe Evelynn is already in a good state to appear in solo queue. People don't know how to play against stealth champions, and the fact that she gets even more of a buff when it comes to her base damage, Evelynn is really obnoxious to play against. And even if you try to buy some magic resistance, if you're a squishy champion, even though you get a Palm Mortius or whatever, it's completely useless. It ignores the shields and you will get executed. So I believe Evelynn is making a return, with not only because of this change, but because the changes of the past few patches that Riot has been back-to-back buffing in the meantime. Galio base health is going to be decreased by 32. This is mainly a pro play change because Galio has been obnoxious as a flex pick as well. You can play it top, you can play it mid, you can even play it on support when you're playing against frontline supports. Top side is really good to play Galio against Rumble, for example. Rumble is a really good pick, but not against Galio. That's why you don't usually blind Rumble anymore, because it's not as strong as it used to be. And Galio being nerfed is mainly a pro play change, as is a really strong pick when it comes to that department, so it's really fair. Kayn, Reaping Lash. This is for Assassin Kayn, I believe. Yeah, exactly. Definitely the weaker option. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, there's not going to be that much of a change because even though the base damage will be increased, how many times does Shadow Assassin really proc a Q on you? Like sometimes it does happen, but most of the times Shadow Assassin Kayn wants to go through the walls, place the W while moving, and then Q to approach and ult away after he deals the finishing blow, right? So yes, it will be more damage, but this doesn't mean a big deal because this Q damage is not usually felt when it comes to Shadow Assassin and Kayn combos overall, I would say. Sometimes it will be felt though. Jack's health growth is going to be increased, base mana regen as well, and the ultimate, I mean, Jax has been disappearing a bit, so that's fair. And the damage from his ulti is going up by 10 and then 15, and initially by 5. So it goes up by 5. It's rank 10 and then 15, basically. Jayce. I'm kind of scared of this change because Jayce is strong in all iterations. He's strong as a tank. He's strong as a tank. He's strong as if he does a D build in a game that where it suits him, it's really good. But they want to nerf the tank build. The problem with this nerf in tank builds by improving the bonus AD ratios is that regular build Jayce, regular AD build Jayce will get a shit ton of buff. Not in the early game because the early game will be affected, but the bonus AD that you get from doing raw AD, despite being a lot squishier, you will deal a lot more damage in comparison to before. It's a 15% bonus AD buff when it comes to Shock Blast into the skies, regardless of the form, and the base damage from W will be decreased to try to compensate from that. And the Transform Mercury Hammer basic attack damage is going to be, in this case, it's going to be decreased in base and amplified in terms of bonus AD. So the more AD you buy, if you don't do the tanky build, eventually you will feel a buff from this, but Riot wants to reduce the base damage from the champion and augment the ratios. Makes a lot of sense, but I'm scared because a full AD Jayce might be too strong when transitioning. Misfortune. Armor growth is going to be decreased as well as the armor, so yeah, Misfortune has been popping off lately, even though she's not really a blind pick. She has a really good angle to show up. She has been showing quite strongly occasionally, so fair enough. Nasus, lifesteal, is going to be increased in his laning phase, and this is really tricky because when Nasus appears, I mean, as far as I remember, Riot usually makes some of these changes to Nasus. I believe before he had 24% already in the past. I believe I'm not mistaken. But this means essentially that Nasus has more sustain because apart from having Doran's Shield in really rough matchups, the fact that you can get extra sustain from your passive, such a simple passive. Like if you compare this passive to new champions, it's ridiculous, right? But just the simple fact that you get a lot of lifesteal early on and then later stages 24%, it's huge. If you get level 18, Nasus is stacked, you cannot just burst him. You will have a lot of HP, a lot of tools to kill you, and it's really obnoxious to play against a Nasus that has the time to scale. So it's possible that he shows up more. I wouldn't say in mid lane, I would say more in top lane because the E changes before made them not as viable as before in mid. So yeah, I'm a bit scared of this buff. Quinn attack speed, this is the ability that she maxes first, so she goes from 28 into 80%. Okay, perfect. By level 9, you have a 20% buff in attack speed, and Quinn is not a champion that usually builds a lot of attack speed, so the fact that you can get synchronized souls, a lot of movement speed throughout the map, not only because of your ulti, but because of the purple boots, and getting this extra attack speed is really good for Quinn, especially when she's mostly played as a counter pick into specific matchups. Rakan W. Cooldown is going down by 2 seconds initially, but this is usually the ability that you max first as well. So this will be mostly felt around level 1, from level 1 to level 5, if you're willing to make some aggression plays. But once you reach level 9, it will be exactly like before, you know? So people are saying that Rakan is weaker. I tend to agree in a way, because in solo queue, yeah, you can agree that Rakan should be a bit weaker in comparison to other frontline supports. But Rakan has something that is unbeatable at, which is mainly is mobility during fights. Yes, Rell can brutally engage. Rell has a lot of sustain, and she will be nerfed in this upcoming patch. But for example, Rakan has a lot of maneuver and possibilities to make this part of the comp. If you have a really good comp to set up and play around a Lee Sin, a Jarvan, a Vi, a Viego, a Skarner, and if you are able to maneuver through flanking positions, you can just go in, go out, while a Rell, for example, or a Leona, they have to be there and they can't go away. So it's basically a sticky effect. And Rakan, I would say this benefits more pro play, because solo queue, people will not utilize this cooldown as much. So yeah, I would definitely say that pro play will benefit more from this initially. Rell, minus 20 health and armor growth goes down by 0.3, so this is a fair nerf. This is to make her squishier in the laning phase, but doesn't really change much. I would say it's maximum 1% loss of win rate, I would say, decrease, and nothing else. Samira, E wild rush 3 seconds to 5 seconds. Yeah, she gets more attack speed, but the amount of times that she will use this, I believe it's not as subtle as it looks. So even though it's 2 seconds more, the amount of times that she will be able to do this, not sure if that will be the case for a lot. Even though it's a big buff, I don't think she will be able to utilize this as efficiently, and this will not change why you would or not pick Samira in the first place. Skarner armor growth goes from 4.8 to 4.5, getting nerfed as well. I mean, the most obnoxious champion in the jungle meta. I believe he has shown every single time. He's the only champion with 100% presence in LEC, I believe. I am fairly confident, and there's a reason why, right? There's a reason on why that happens. Skarner is really fucking disgusting, so they decided to move the X-Styles impact from 1.5 into 1 second. This changes a couple of systematical combos that he can make, and also the fact that you drop this by 33%. Now it's a big change, not gonna lie. Skarner will still be very strong, but not as obnoxious as he is currently, and I believe he will not be permabanned as before. But yeah, thank God he got nerfed. I've already had enough of this champion, to be honest. He has been in the meta for too long as well. Swain, max health per soul fragment is going up to 15, so he gets more HP, and the base damage is going to be untouched, and the AP ratio is going to be increased. Doesn't really matter too much, because Swain is similar to Cassiopeia. He doesn't really want to build more AP or AP ratio oriented, for example. What he really wants to do usually is to build stats, flat out stats, essentially. So if Swain is going to have 200 AP by 25 minutes, this means that it's a 20 damage buff in E. The laning phase will not change anything, so the only moment you will truly feel it is later stages, which means by mid game, this 20 damage will not then make that big of a change, I would say. I think this one is more impactful. The max health per soul fragment is definitely going to be more felt than this 20 damage for sure. Teemo on-hit damage is going to be decreased, so he's still getting nerfed. Okay. Brox is not happy with this one. On-hit damage is going to be decreased per level, and by the time you reach the 5th ability, it will be reduced by 1 only, so yeah. Thresh increased by 20 HP, basic attack damage per soul goes up by 0.2 and then up to 90, blah blah blah, total AD. Keep in mind that his passive stacks rely on this damage increase as well from Fly, okay? But either way, despite this 20 health buff and despite the Flay change, Thresh will eventually show, but I don't believe this is still the patch. I think he's still not in the place to show. I think there are some angles where he could show for sure, but not as dominant as he previously was a couple of years ago. And I believe it's a good meta to bring back Thresh as well. Because Thresh mainly showed up when Jinx Aphelios were the meta back then, but he got a lot of nerfs when that meta arrived, and he's been disappeared for a while already. So I'm happy that Riot is trying to give him some attention. I don't believe it's enough, even though you get more damage. I mean, it's 20 HP, he needs more. He has more problems within his kit. Viego, pro play nerf, basically, minus 3 damage. It will still be fine, but is the highest performing jungler along with Skarner and Wukong, which makes a lot of sense. W cooldown, this is mainly a Wukong top nerf, which is really strange. They should look to nerf the jungle Wukong, and the Nimbus Strike is completely applied to it. His clear speed is not the best in comparison to some of the junglers, and they're trying to reduce it as well in this attack speed nerf. It will still be fine as well. In angles where you want to pick Wukong, you will, but you won't blind pick him as much as before. There are people that blind pick Wukong when it should be looked as a counter pick, mainly. Okay, so if you're looking to him as a counter pick, you should definitely keep that in mind, that it will still be strong, but not as blindable as it was before. Especially if you want to play in top side, then it's a 2-second nerf, but still, it's a reduction of clear speed because of the attack speed, but it will still be in a fairly good shape. Bloodsong is going to be nerfed. It goes from 10% melee to 8% melee and 5% ranged untouched. And from 6 seconds, it goes for 4 seconds. Melee. Deserved, I think Bloodsong is really overpowered. I don't know why we're touching Zaz'Zak. I think this item is completely useless. So AP ratio being nerfed is a joke. I don't think it's really performing well, so it is what it is. Now, one of the main changes of this patch, right before they have made a durability patch change, reducing electrocute damage, reducing rune efficiency, and reducing how well runes interacted not only in the early game but sometimes in the mid and late transitions. Electrocute is being buffed by 20 damage at level 1. You remember the Swain change in here? We just saw a 20 damage buff in the mid game to Swain. In this position, we're witnessing a 20 flat damage level 1. So they're bringing back electrocute damage. And it's 70 damage. It's a lot of damage. Ratio will be unchanged, and it's going to be based on level. Not only that, but it will be increased by 50 by level 18. But the main change is 20 damage by level 1, because 50 damage at level 18 will not be as strong as 20 damage in early game, which is why you want to bring electrocute to try to snowball games throughout your laning phase. I'm really scared of this change. I think Riot is making a huge mistake. I think they should start by doing 60 damage instead of 70. I think 20 flat damage being given is too much. I think they should start to give 10 damage, and if it's not enough, or if they don't feel it's enough, then increase it by 5 or 10 again. But yeah, electrocute is really fucking obnoxious again, so keep that in mind for sure. Dark Harvest is going to be increased by 10 and 11 per soul. I mean, yeah, if you're playing, for example, Gragas jungle, or you're not looking to really gank early and you want to stack through your Dark Harvest, then it will be a good option for you to take, even though electrocute will be more dominant because of this flat 20 damage buff for sure. This is also 10 plus 2 per stacks, but still, it's definitely a compensation for how garbage the domination tree was by the initial part of the season. Now, Halo Blades, keep this in mind. I saw some people being mistaken and thinking, oh, I'm going to play Halo Blades Kalista and we are so back. No, guys, it's melee attack speed, okay? It's melee attack speed, so it goes from 110% for melee to 140. Ranged champions will be able to utilize it more because of the cooldown reduction, because the cooldown is global, but the melee attack speed is only melee, okay? No other ranged champions will be able to utilize this. So champions as Spike, champions as, I don't know, Zinzao even, or champions that really want to utilize this as Shaco, and so on, they will benefit from these changes. And range champions, I mean, they will benefit from the 2-second cooldown decrease. But it's a scary time for solo queue because Snowball might be back for early game. And it has been chaotic, but it will be even more during the early game. Swift play, I'm not gonna lie, we don't give a fuck about Swift play. Champions, Fiddlesticks. Yeah, this is Swift play still. ARAM, I do care about ARAM, but I don't care about what they change. ARF, I haven't played it yet. This is really cool though. It goes to 10.0 attack speed. But yeah, we don't really care about this. I mean, personally, I don't care about this. We have Mythic Shop, new skin line, I believe. Some bug fixes. A lot of bug fixes if you want to look into it. Dumpling Darling Zemumu and Dumpling Darling Syndra. Okay, so another way for Riot to make more money, am I right? So just to make a really quick TLDR of the patch, as we usually do, let's look into it. A really quick TLDR. Attack speed buff is really nice. It's going to benefit mainly on its champions and some of the melee champions, such as Mastery, for example, especially when you can play with enchanters. I like these bounties changes because it means that they will be less strong, less efficient. Obviously, Chemtech Soul deserves a buff, Cloud Soul deserves a nerf, but will still be fine. Grubs will still be contestable, even though melee champions won't be as obnoxious as before. Atakhan, I don't really like this Atakhan, but now we'll have a longer time to respawn, which is really nice when it withdraw. Cassiopeia deserves a nerf, she will still be fine. Evelynn is receiving a lot of nerfs consecutively, so she will still be in a fine spot. Galio loses 30 HP, will lose a bit of win rate because of this, but he will still be fine, as is obnoxious in skirmishing power. Kayn doesn't really change much, even though it's a bit of damage increase. Jax deserves the buff, he has been disappeared for a while. Jayce, I'm a bit scared because of the recent changes that he might get too much damage from his flat AD build, but the tank build will heavily be nerfed when it comes to damage. Misfortune, just a slight durability and survivability nerf into your early game. Nasus, really scary buff because he gets more sustain. Quinn, really nice buff, she gets more attack speed and she will be in a good shape when it comes to counterpick matchups. Rakan, really good change for early game, doesn't really change much by level 9. Rell deserves a nerf, really high performing champion. Samira doesn't change a single thing on why you would pick her or not. Skarner will probably not be 100% presence anymore. It will still appear, and this is a big change in my perspective, but I believe that it will still be occasionally picked and not permabanned as he is currently. Swain doesn't really change much. I think the biggest change is max health per soul fragment. Never move change. Doesn't really exist. You don't want to stack too much AP on Swain. Teemo, it's a big change. Goes from 14 to 9 early, so we will lose a bit of toxicity for the early stages. Thresh, he needs more buffs, but I like the fact that Riot is trying to move into a position where they want him to be meta. Viego loses 3 AD because of how dominant he is in the jungle. It will still be fine, but loses some of its popularity, such as Wukong. Mainly top Wukong also being nerfed, but his clear speed is going to be decreased. Is he fine? Yes, he will still be a good responsive pick. Bloodsong completely deserves a nerf. I don't know what the fuck they cooked with Zaz'Zak though. I'm really not sure why they nerfed this item. Electrocute, this is the scariest buff of the patch. 20 flat damage. Dark Harvest is also receiving a big buff, such as Ale of Blades. So that's it for the patch. And thank you for watching. I'll see you in the 4th one. And I'm guessing that Electrocute might be at least slightly reverted, but we'll see how it goes.